Friday today. Another sunny day outside. Feels good. Feels good. Can't wait to get outside on my bike actually, because I think it's finally warm enough. And looks like most of the snow's melted, so the streets won't really be wet. Yeah, good days are coming. But today I want to talk a bit about business again, kind of how I did yesterday. I mentioned how companies, corporations, businesses are these wonderful collections of people and how they can function greatly for the people if you choose to do that. But, and this is kind of what I'm going through right now. It's hard to get them started. There's this giant, barrier to entry, a giant step I have to climb over just to get started. There's paperwork to fill out that I have no freaking idea what it is. If not, I have to pay a lawyer. Lawyers are expensive. And if at least I am, starting a small business, half my expenses would just be the lawyer fees. That's before I even buy the products, It just doesn't make sense, so I have to do it myself. It's just so much. And then what about advertising? Well, in a way, that game is rigged too. All those Yelp reviews, Google reviews, they're paid for. I don't know if you know, but they're paid for. What Yelp will do is they'll essentially blackmail you. They'll send you messages asking you, oh, hey, buy our premium service, buy our certification plaque. And it's essentially blackmail, it's extortion. And if you don't, suddenly their algorithms, their algorithms will change things up a bit. And that 5-star review you got, disappeared. Now it's at the bottom of the list. And the 1-star review that looks made up is suddenly at the top. Weird practices, eh? And we'll get back to those weird practices later, why they happen. Same thing with Google. Google, maybe, I don't think it works exactly the same as Yelp. You don't outright pay Google for that. I mean, you can. You can get your website listed higher up through their algorithm by paying for it. So again, it's kind of like a pay-to-win scenario. And of course, all the small businesses, all the businesses that are starting up, all the businesses that are struggling financially can't afford those services. And so, again, just the people on top, they just keep climbing. And the people on the bottom, they keep falling. And it's so hard. The barrier to entry, it just never ends as a small business. And then even as a big business, right? Yeah, man, I've got to organize my thoughts right now because I'm flying off the handle, and it kind of upsets me. It gets me going how unfair this game is and how rigged it can be, and how it could be so much better, so much easier. If you have a good idea, you should just run with your good idea, especially if the idea brings value to people, and especially if your business is one that connects people, brings them together, brings them more happiness, makes their lives easier. And it's weird how this idea of a corporation that was designed to bring people together, to harness their strengths, balance out their weaknesses, pool their resources, and also at the same time legally protect them. Because imagine if you're working on $100 million project and it's a bridge, let's say, or it's a $100 billion project. It's a bridge spanning across 10 kilometers, and it fails, it breaks. This happened probably a lot more often in the 19th century or the 20th century than it does now in the 21st, but bad business practices still lead to failure. So that bridge fails. Who do you blame? Who do you sue? Are you going to sue every individual engineer working there? No one would want to work for a corporation if you were at risk for getting sued $100 billion, right? So it offers this legal protection at the same time. And just everything about it is such a great idea. But then, as we could see today in practice, it's just been abused. It's been so abused. And this protection now extends to actual bad practice. And so people get away with things that they really shouldn't get away with. it's sketchy. You know, how can such a good idea get corrupted so poorly? You know, going back to the pay to win review system and the advertising, right? I'm not an expert on it by any means. I've only just dabbled in it. But from my perspective, the way I view it is the investors are the ones that are pushing this kind of practice. Because once you start taking profits above all else, especially when it's investor profits, investors aren't really, they don't participate in the system. All they do is just provide that initial capital to help the business get over that first hump. But then in a way, it's like, it's a debt, right? It's a debt. You're indebted to these investors. And you got to pay it back. So then the first hump, yeah, you got over that, but now you have a second hump. You've got to get over your investors because your investors aren't participating in the system. All they care about is the money. So the quality of your product suffers. Like look at Yelp. I'm calling Yelp out a lot, but it's all the companies because Yelp is what we have here. I don't know what you guys have in your part of the world. Maybe it's Google reviews, but so that suffers the same kind of flaws, right? Because then they're just embedded in their investors. It could be public investors, so if it's a publicly traded company, public people. But even then, publicly traded companies are mostly just owned by banks and investment firms. So then you just have to follow the money. Where does the money go, right? If it's not the customers, where does the money come from? Investors. And I'm sure, maybe some of them actually mean well and they want to see a quality product, but they also want their money. They want their money. So like I said, the quality of the product, it suffers. And I don't want to build my business that way. But then it's so damn hard getting over that first hump, just getting it started. It's so expensive. There's so many expenses to pay. My business is sharing paddles right now. Actually buying the paddles, having them shipped over from China is ridiculously expensive. It's going to cost like $5,000 to get even a small workable amount of paddles, right? Because we need, 40, 50 paddles. Even that's not enough. That's just going to service one club. If we want to service all the clubs in Montreal, that'll be even more expensive. If we want to expand to other cities like Toronto, Vancouver, maybe expand to the States, go to Europe, whole bunch more expenses. Then we have to pay employees, to help manage all of the paperwork, lawyers for all the legal work, not to mention all the other stuff, like, because there's operational expenses too, like me driving my car, that's a big expense. Running the website, you have to pay, trying to use Squarespace right now, seems like the best option. That's also pretty expensive, and it just adds up and it adds up. And if you don't have all of the capital, it's really hard to do. So what do you turn to? Do you turn to a loan, a bank, a debt? Yeah, you get over that first hump, but then you've just created a second hump to get over now. See what I mean? It's just difficult to do, and it shouldn't be that difficult. And then sometimes I just wonder, is it really that difficult? Is it really that difficult? Because it's something I've been really, really wanting to do. And every step I've taken so far that I've worried about how difficult it is, in hindsight now, looking back on it, it wasn't really that hard. I talk about doing what your heart wants, following your passion. Worrying about it in the future, yeah. But once you're actually doing it, when you're in the moment doing it, it's not that hard. It's actually pretty easy. Because it's like what you were designed for. It's your purpose in life, Now, I don't really believe in like design or destiny. I think we kind of forge our own, and over time we learn and we grow and we realize what's right for us. But in a way, doing what you truly, truly desire, what will bring you actual happiness, it's the easiest thing in the world. So in a way, all of these negativities out there, all this like, all these stupid practices these companies partake in, you know, they're not illegal. They're not illegal, which is debatable. But all of these negative practices, like I said, with the reviews, how you essentially are extorted to pay for good reviews. And then like how do you compete with the big boys? Because they'll wreck you in terms of capital every time. But what they can't wreck you with is quality. What they can't wreck you with is actual passion. Because they're not doing it because it feels right. They're doing it for the money. They are. Now there's some companies that don't do it for the money. And oddly enough, those are usually the companies that you love. You love to be in the restaurants, you know, little family-owned restaurants. They have the best food. Did you ever notice that? There's no food will ever compare to that. Not even the richest food company in the world, McDonald's. They can't compete in terms of quality, in terms of value, when it comes to the little family business down the street. So that's the kind of struggle I'm going through right now. Just trying to start up my company and start it right from day one, so I don't have to deal with loans and investors and their needs and wants over my needs and wants and my customers' needs and wants and my employees' needs and wants. Because those are more important. It's the people. It's the people that are important, not the money. So yeah, hopefully I'll see you out there, you know, buying my paddles, renting my paddles, sharing our paddles, right? As I mentioned, I'm trying to bring a new kind of mentality of ownership to the world. I hope it works out.